The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sharon Dooley. I'm going to be the moderator for this session today. It's an interesting topic on managing lots of instances, and Tracy's given this talk several times at SQL Saturdays, and I hope you will all find it interesting. Um, excuse me, we have another Business Analytics Day coming up. It's going to be in San Diego on October 3rd, and there is a special price going on. If you want to attend, you can save some money, and it will be an exciting day. Summit is fast approaching, October 31st through November 3rd. If you use our code VC15FPS6, you will save $150. And if 20 people use this code, we'll get a complimentary registration, which we will raffle off closer to the event. Summit's a wonderful adventure. I am really looking forward to it. I have my hotel, my plane tickets, etc. already, and I now just have to wait until Halloween to take off. We are one of many virtual groups. Many of the virtual groups have a particular focus. This one is database administration. However, there are also some that specialize in languages and do their presentations in Italian or Hebrew or whatever. So you can sign up for any ones that you're interested in. Just go to pass.org and edit your profile. We have at Summit, there will be a volunteer who will be selected to receive the Passion Award. This is somebody who demonstrates exceptional dedication to and enthusiasm for the PASS community. And you can nominate people as you see fit. They give a plaque and all of that stuff to the winner. It's summer, so SQL Saturday is sort of on slow, but there are still some of them happening. SQL Saturday is a one-day free training event, and they are, as you can see, all over the world, and you can sign up, just register for one that's near you. Some people travel around to various ones that aren't too far away. There may be a local chapter. Unlike this virtual group, the local groups have a physical presence. You can meet other people in your community, and you get face-to-face networking opportunities. If there isn't a local group in your area, you can start one, and you can get help from PASS by contacting ce@sqlpass.org. PASS is an all-volunteer organization. We have, yes, there is paid staff in the headquarters, but by and large it's driven by volunteers, and you can volunteer for various activities, by going to your past profile. Now, this is not really for you guys who are already in the audience, but all the people who sign up and subscribe to us on YouTube. You guys, you're getting the recordings, but you're missing a lot. Go to SQLpass.org and become a member. It's free. And in addition to getting the recordings, which you can find on YouTube, you'll be able to download supplemental materials like the scripts that most of our speakers provide. I've said enough about PASS. I want to talk about Tracy. She's a database administrator for Channel Advisor, and she's been in IT for over 20 years and is a longtime SQL Server user. She started with this database business in middle school to keep her baseball card collection organized. I'm particularly impressed with her passion outside of SQL Server. She volunteers with foster children as their advocate in court. And I think that's such an important thing to do for those who really don't have anybody standing up for them. And what I'm going to do now is turn the presentation over to Tracy, and I'm going to attempt to unmute her.
Hello.
Okay, you're set. Go with it. It's yours.
All right. So I'm Tracy Boggiano, and we're going to talk about managing a lot of SQL Server instances. She's already told you a lot about me. I'll just tell you more about my passion outside of SQL. Again, just because it is my favorite job. I do advocate for foster kids in court, and I encourage other people, if you're interested in that program, to please send me an email. I'd like to encourage other people to do it. It only requires 8 to 10 hours of your time a month to be able to do that, and it's a great program to be involved in. So I'll skip over that for now. So we already talked enough about me. My contact information is below. It's very simple, just my name. It's just hard to spell, Boggiano. That's it. And my blog and Twitter handle and email are there. I'm open to any questions afterwards because we will be covering a lot of ground and free tools and stuff. So the agenda, we're going to cover why you would need to know how to take care of a lot of instances, what you would need to do, and how you can go about doing it, and then we'll summarize everything up. So let me get webinar out of my way. So as far as the why goes, when you have one server, it's pretty easy to set everything up. You can just use the wizard. You can change your configuration using the GUI. You can just alter things using the Studio Manager. You can just check the logs in Studio Manager. You've only got one server, so you can babysit it pretty easy. You don't even really need to be a DBA for that. When you got 10 servers, you can pretty much just do that 10 times. And you get bored though. You get a little bored doing it 10 times, and you start looking for better solutions. When you get in my environment and you got 400 servers, you're like, I need some tools for that stuff. Or you hire a lot of DBAs to do it, and you look like Booth on Bones, and you get really bored when he's talking to what he calls the squints down in the scientific area, and they're trying to explain stuff to him, and you're like, no, not this again. So you start looking for better ways to do things. So this is why you would want to do it. In my environment, we have about 400 servers really running one application. So they're pretty much in production. That's about 140 servers that pretty much are set up the same way. So we have to make sure everything stays in sync, our security stays in sync, and different settings stay in sync across all those servers. So this is going to cover some of the different ways you can go about doing that. So as far as the what's, we're going to go through this fairly quickly because there's a lot of what's. Some of the things are, what you set up with SP configure. You want your backup compression, how you set up your max and min memory, your cost hold threshold for parallelism, because that's still set back for the SQL 2000 days. You want to set up your database mel, your backup checksum default needs to be changed. And, these days everybody sets the optimize for ad hoc workloads on because it doesn't hurt anything. We like to have our error log retention set or set it to rotate by size now because you can do that so you get more than just 6 logs, because if you happen to reboot multiple times then you lose all your error logs because there's only 6 of them. Other things, if we've got multiple environments, we've got dev, prod, QA, and a staging environment, so we have different service accounts for those and trying to keep those in sync across those environments. We've got different security for those environments because in dev, developers can do more than they can do in prod. They can do a little bit more in QA, but once they get to staging, they can do a little bit less. So trying to keep all those users in sync and those permissions in sync across those environments gets a little different. Trying to make sure all your default database locations and backup locations stay in sync can be a little fun across different environments. And your temp DB configuration and development, your temp DBs are probably smaller than they are in production. So trying to make sure you have a consistent size and growth factors set up can be fun. And as we mentioned, database mel as well, making sure it's going to your pager on production versus in dev, you don't want it going to your pager. So making sure you're setting those up based on the environment. You also want to set up, your operators correctly. What maintenance jobs you want running in which environments, all your alerts, the objects for your master database, because as soon as you install a server, you don't have the community tools anymore, your SP who is active or your SP blitz or all the hologram scripts if you use those for maintenance or minionware. One thing we set up is a restart of services on failure, so if a service just has a memory dump and stops, we have it automatically restart. And there's a way you can set that up using PowerShell, and we have a new server config script that we use to set that up. At the database level, you want to set your recovery model. At my last job, we set everything but prod, we set in simple mode. At my current job, we set everything to full mode. So your mileage may vary depending on your system there. You also may want to change your update statistics to async instead of sync, so you're not waiting for those statistics to auto update while your queries are running. We use a recommitted snapshot as well here by default. So if you're using that as a default setting, you want to make sure that is set on your databases. Want to make sure you change your auto growth settings because those are set pretty small at 1 meg and can take forever to grow. Changing your DB owner. If you've got 2016 installed, you probably want to make sure your query store is turned on by default and the size and those settings are set properly when you first set up your new database. And then after you get all your settings set, now you've got 400 servers. You need to know what's going on with those servers. You need what was running on your box. You need to know what might have been happening yesterday at 2:30 p.m. because someone comes in and goes, hey, I seen something. You might need to know what metrics changed over time, how your performance is changing over time, and you need to know what jobs are failing. So there's all kinds of different things that you're going to want to know what is happening on your server, and these are the things that you're going to try to set up tools to help you with. So other things that you have that we're not going to cover, but you may need to set up certain extended event sessions and SQL audits to copy over. And there's other tools out there. DBA Tools helps you with copying some of those from other servers and things like that. But you've got a whole slew of things, Service Broker and other things like that may be added to the list. But again, you can't cover everything in an hour, so we're going to stick with the list we got, or at least try to cover most of what was on that list. So now we're going to go over some of what on the on the how to keep things in sync, or at least make sure things are in sync. So the first thing you got to do is come up with a method that you're going to use to help you keep things in sync. So one way to standardize your toolbox is there's a tool out there called the Enterprise Policy-Based Management Framework that'll let you set up policies on one server, and it'll evaluate all your servers that are part of your central management server and tell you whether those policies are true or not. So you can set it up to say, is my auto growth set correctly? Is all my tables not in my primary file group? So are you following all these best practices? And it'll create reports for you, and you can use that, and we'll take a look at that tool. Then you've got central management server, so you can set up a central management server to have all your servers listed, so you can run queries against a group of servers at a time and make your changes all at once. Then you've got community scripts that you can use to keep up with what's running on a server. As far as SP Who is active helps you with what's running on a server. SP Blitz can tell you different things that you may want to change on a server. All the hologram scripts can be used for maintenance type things, backups, index optimize, and those type things. And then you can go the route of developing your own using PowerShell or using someone else's PowerShell stuff. So we've got some PowerShell development tools there. So we're going to take a look at some of these tools. We're going to look at the CMS server, the policy-based management that we talked about. We're going to take a look at an old school tool called the MXX TXX server, where you have a server that has is set up as your master target server job server, and you can set targets for the jobs to run on multiple servers. It's been in SQL since SQL 7, and it doesn't get much love and used a lot, but it's one way to standardize your jobs across all your servers. And then we're going to look at some PowerShell commands and some community scripts, and we're going to look at a tool called Pile. We're going to take a quick look at Query Store as well. So as far as the CMS server, that stands for Central Management Server. So that gives you a way to centrally set up what all the servers you have on your environment are. So one way I used this at my last job, because in my last job I had a whole bunch of different versions of SQL, starting with, I had 6.5 through 2012. I couldn't register my 6.5 server because it was too old, but you could register 2000 and above in it. So I would set them up in the different groups based on what version they were, based on prod versus dev. Sometimes I had them in there by application, so I could run things by application. So you can set them up in these different groups and use that to help you organize your environment so that you can run scripts against a folder and be able to change things based on this application needs this particular setting. Like SharePoint needs max.1. So if you had all your SharePoint servers in a folder, you could change that. Or when there was a bug in 2008 where you couldn't have your auto growth set to an even number of 4 gigs, you could change that to, just 4,000 instead of 4,096 megabytes. So those type of things. So it just provides you a way to have a hierarchy of different ways to do that. The only drawback to that is it's Windows authentication only, because once it's set up, everybody has access to it that has access to that server. So you don't want to store any SQL authenticated users there. So we'll take a quick look at how to set that up, or how it's set up and how you can add a server to it. I have one already set up for my AG environment, and I have all my AGs in here, and you can set up any number of folders that you want in here. But all you gotta do to add a server is register new server, and you can register any server you want in there. So I can register my AG2 server as in management server in here, and then I can create a new folder for it in here, and then I can add a new server, my AG1 server, And now any AGs I set up in here, if there were multiple servers, I could run a new query and it would open up a window where it would run a query against every server that was in that group. So you can use that to apply changes across all those servers that were in that group. In my environment, we have like hundreds of folders. It feels like hundreds. There's probably only about 20, but there's a lot of folders. And we use it extensively to deploy code because we know what folders to deploy things to. So that's a quick look at Central Management Server. That'll come in handy when we look at our enterprise policy-based management system in just a minute, because it's a requirement for that. So speaking of enterprise policy-based management, this takes advantage of your policy-based management, and what it does is it'll run any policies that you set up on a centralized server against multiple servers and provide you reports. Right now it's available on CodePlex. CodePlex is being shut down. I believe it's been moved to GitHub. I haven't verified that to have a link to it. Before I give the slides to Sharon, I'll double check to see if it's been moved. The last time I checked, it hadn't been. But you will need a report server for this and CMS to run this. And what it does is it sets up a PowerShell script. You put the PowerShell script on a folder on your server, and it'll run against a group of servers for you. So you can run it against like 2005. It can run this group of policies against the 2005 servers, or it can run this group of policies against the 2014 servers, or it can run it against all of them. And it's got step-by-step directions on how to set everything up, and then it produces reports based on whether it passes or fails your policies or not. SQL comes with some policies already built in that you can import. They call their best practices policies. If you right-click on policies and do import, it by default takes you to a server best practices, and you can go into the engine and drill all the way down, and it has a bunch of best practices that you can import to give you a good start on the ones that you want to use, like making sure that your database doesn't have auto close or auto shrink turned on, for example, or that the file growth is not too small, or the guest permissions, or making sure your last successful backup is within a certain time frame, making sure your backup and your data file locations aren't on the same drive, things that you do not want to do. Escape. There we go. And that's how you would import them, and then you would have a job that would run against your group that you have your CMS set up against. To show you an example of what a report looks like, because mine's fairly large that I imported from my production system, I ran ahead and brought it up because my VM's pretty small in memory, so I didn't want to take a chance that it would take forever to run. I do have a few that are out of compliance, and it shows me which ones I failed by month, and this is back from February, and we have a few custom things, and it'll tell you which servers are out of compliance, and you can click and see what results they have from there and drill down if you need to. If you drill down on them, we'll see if it will run fast or not. I've got a couple of VMs open, but I'm afraid I don't have enough memory to run that particular database. It's fairly large. We'll see if it loads when I come back to it. But that's pretty much the enterprise policy-based management framework. Like I said, there's a link at the end for how to go about setting it up. But this is how you would set up your policies. That way you can evaluate to make sure all your systems are the same, and you know which ones to change to make them the same. That way you have a good starting place for making sure your systems are the way they need to be configured going forward, And then as you make new policies about how you want your system set up, you can add them in here and make sure things stay consistent and the same. And we have this report running daily, and it sends us reports to make sure things are set up properly on our environment. And the report came up right when I went away. So it's telling us that we're missing our audit specifications on a few reports. So we have SOX compliance on a few that are missing. Actually, it's passing those. So, and then we tell it not to allow anything on the default file group. So those are the ones that we have that are in compliance, and we'd have to sort it to find the ones that have failed. So that's a handy tool that someone put out that we found pretty handy. So I put an example report in here just in case my memory was too small on my machine to get it to run. So talked a little bit about the master target server feature that's been around since SQL 7 that Microsoft never talks about. But basically what that allows you to do is specify one server as your master server for jobs, and you can set up all your jobs on that server. And then you can set up other servers as targets to run those jobs. Then any jobs that you need to run on the master job have to be set up on the master server, have to be set up as local jobs. So if your backup jobs, it would have to be set up twice. So you would have to run those locally and run those remotely. So that's the only downfall to it, is that you can't target it. It can't target itself. So we find this useful for setting up SP who is active, because we capture that every minute on our environment on every server and log it to a table. We also use it for all the hologram scripts for our backups and stuff, because I have a script that's included in the downloads you'll get that actually creates it as a T-SQL step and has a table that you can put all your config information into. That way, if you want to change your backup paths across your environments, you can put it into the table, and you don't have to change it in the job steps, and it just pulls it from the table on that server. And any parameter that you want to change that's in all the scripts, you just change in the table on that particular server. And it gets it away from the SQL command, which means it'll actually run in Linux when 2017 comes out if you're looking at running at Linux. So we'll take a quick look at the MXX, TXX stuff as well and how that's configured. So the first thing you have to do is you have to make a server a target server. I'll make sure you can see that. So I'm on my AG1, and I'm going to make it the master server. And it provides you a nice little wizard to set up an operator for it, which I just added myself as the operator. And then it lets you go into your AGs and pick out a server if you want to. And then it finishes setting up everything for you, and it failed to enlist. And it was enlisted earlier. Oh, I can't enlist a local machine. I gotta enlist AG2. My bad. Can't make itself a target. Makes perfect sense. And then once you've got it set up, you can add target servers in there very easily. And it provides you basically the same wizard. And this time we'll add AG2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one of my backup scripts I got for all the holograms backups. And what this does is it creates a table. I want to change it to or alter just in case I've already created a table that has all the parameters in it. and it automatically puts the system and the user's databases for full diffs and logs in there and creates the jobs for us if they haven't already been created, which I don't think I have any jobs on here. I think I deleted them all. Nope, I didn't. So I'm going to delete them. I'll let it run. Well, the alter doesn't work until 2017, maybe then. Okay, that table already exists, so we don't need to worry about that. I'm bad for not cleaning that up. But we're going to create all the jobs. If we can highlight everything. Control E. Sorry, it's lots of lines of code. We've already created our table, so we don't need that. Okay. So now that we actually have jobs, all I did for all the scripts is I converted them over to where it has variables for all the parameters for all his parameters, and then it selects it from that table I created. And then it calls his stored procedure, sending in the parameters instead of using the SQL command. So I use that method rather than using the SQL command, and it does the exact same thing. So now back to using the master target job. Now that you have the master server target, you have this targets that you can select, and you can tell it to run on the AG server, AG2 server, and now that job will appear on AG2 when we connect to AG2. Gotta give it time to sync. So it can take up to 30 to 60 seconds for it to sync over there. It does have a little management tool for seeing if it's syncing or not. Because it has one unread instruction, so it's still sending it over there because it hasn't sent it yet. So let's see if we can force it to send it over there. Yeah, there we go. Now it says unread, so now it's over there. There we go. So now we have the job over here, and if you want to configure it special, you create that table on that system, and you put anything special you need for the parameters in that table instead of having to configure a job individually for every system. So that's the trick I use for using all the scripts for multi-target server jobs. So let me come to, oops, don't start all the way over. When we come to everybody's newest favorite tools is using PowerShell for everything. So everybody's using PowerShell for a lot of stuff. So one thing that we do here is we've got a script to create for our new server configs and we are starting to do more of the DBA tools module and start doing commandlets for stuff instead of having big long scripts that take forever to debug. One script that we've got that I've posted is a get CMS host script that queries your CMS host, your CMS server and returns your server list for you, so you can run your configs against that script, or you can just run scripts against your server to get information back. I also have a script that'll actually run a patch using the CMS host or a text file that you send in, and we do patching in batches of like 10 servers at a time, and we get 2 or 3 of us running them at a time, and we patch multiple servers that way, and that's included as part of a demo. We will run it and come back in like 10 minutes and see if it actually see when it finishes, because patching takes a few minutes. DBA tools, as part of that new server config, we're using our set max memory from there, our temp DB, we're setting a DB owner and set power plan. I'm just going to go through some of those with you just so you can see how DBA tools work. They've got a lot of stuff on their website. If you're not familiar with DBA tools, it's dbatools.io. There's a link for that at the end. So we're going to go through a couple of scripts that I've created and some DBA tool stuff. So the first one I have is a multi-query server one, which has our get CMS host, which allows me to query against a CMS host server. I have it set up for this demo just to query a text file, but you can set up your CMS host server in, send that name in here, and it'll query your CMS host file. I could send in AG1 here and it would query against it, but for this purpose, because I only have one server in there, I wanted you to be able to see that it can query against multiple servers. And then at the end, I've got this block of code that queries against multiple servers, because I've got a text file that sends in 2 server names to it, and it just returns the version number just to have something simple to output to a grid. And I can easily have it send in any other query that I want to send in. You can do a SP who is active, return some perf mine counters, any DMV you want. You can use it to update stuff if you want, and just tell it not to do the out the grid part at the end. Out here, you can just take that off if you're going to do updates. I find this a nice handy way to do changes to just specific servers that I want to make changes to, or specific servers I want to query. As far as DBA tools, there's a lot of cool things that they have available for you to run things against. So one is being able to set the max memory. So whenever you're setting up a new server, I like the fact that they have the what if set up in there. So if you run it, it'll tell you what it would do if it was setting it. So right now the total memory on my server is 8192. My old value was 5120, and it would set it to 5120 based on what their parameter is. So if I was to go in and change it, it would if I was to run this and it was set to something else, this is what it would recommend changing it to. Same thing with setting your temp DB. They've got a real easy way to go ahead and set your temp DB. We always set ours to disable the auto growth, and you can. I'm doing what ifs on here because mine's already set on my machine from having done previous demos. And that's the first time it's giving me a path not found on there. I didn't like that my file count exceeds my logical core count, but that's okay on here because I've only got one CPU for my virtual machine. Did I update DBA tools and not typing in demos? Not supposed to do that. We're going to give it bad file paths. Let's see if that helps any. Yep, see, typing in demos is bad. Yep, I'm not sure what that complaint is. The last time I ran that demo, it worked. I may have updated DBA tools and it not be working right now. So, other common problem we have on machines is not having a proper power plan set on your machine. This can be a problem at inside your virtual and actually at your physical machine as well. So you need to check both. But it can tell you whether your power plan is set for high performance or whether it's not. So my power plan is set to balance instead of high performance, which I probably need to leave alone on my laptop. So that's why I left it as a what if. Otherwise, my laptop will run out of juice very fast. You can get the registered server name, and one thing that's nice on some of their commandlets is they've got to get detailed, which will give you a lot of detailed information about their commandlets that you can go through, and they give you examples of how to pull out information. This is their version of running a my Git CMS host. So this is a different way of creating your central management server that you can use. It doesn't accept a text file, but it does do the CMS host part. So, but it's nice that they have such detailed help available in their tool set. Another nice thing that helps out when you have AGs is they have the ability to sync your logins across your AGs. So if you set up a new user on your machine, like we hired a new DBE recently and we had to set them up because we have linked servers. So we can run one command and his new ID will be over there and we don't have to worry about SIDS being out of sync or anything else. So that's kind of nice. And then you can always run SP who is active into a grid. And that's kind of nice because in a grid, SP who is active, it's easier to do a little bit of sorting and put in your where clauses with your criteria. So is that all the demos I had? Oh yeah, we were going to run the patching. So we were going to patch number 2. So one of my colleagues built this patching PowerShell script. We call it the SQL Updater script. We send it in a list of SQL servers via a text file. We send in what the current version of the SQL is and what version we want to patch it to. So we're going to put it on CU4 because this is still 2016. And we have a Git repository that it goes to and pulls from, which we are going to delete that because we don't have Git in my demo environment. And we give it its command path, and I realize the blue is really hard to read there, but that's just telling it to print only if it doesn't want to run. And then we just tell it to run what you would normally tell it at the command line to run, that path, tell it to run quietly and what instance to patch. And yeah, I accept the terms and licenses agreements. So we've got our patching down to where we can just specify a text file and run this via PowerShell and it will run. And considering I took out that one part that will run files for us, I'm going to delete this out. And we'll let this run. Hopefully it'll run without error. And that's fine. And it found my instance AG1, AG2 out of my, and I don't have Zoom in on this machine, I'm sorry. But it found AG2 in my text file and it's doing some initial stuff to figure out what it needs to do. And it's waiting, it runs its jobs to finish deploying. So we'll come back to that machine and see how it ran in a little bit. Certain patching takes a little bit of time. I don't want to, only got 15 minutes left, so I want to make sure we cover some community scripts you can use to watch how things are running on your machine. And I started all the way over again. That's my font. I like the F5 button, you know, use it in Studio Manager all the time. But as far as we like to run SP Who is Active every minute on our system. That way we can keep an eye on, you know, the larger things that are running, and sometimes you catch the things that are killing you by 1,000 cuts per second because they run so often. Aaron Bertrand wrote that, and he's created a nice website for it recently with a lot of documentation around it. SP Blitz is a good script to run that Brent Ozar's teams put out that you can run against a machine, and it kind of audits it and tells you the things that they think are set incorrectly, and it's got hyperlinks that you can go read on their blog and got more information. We use all of Hologram's maintenance scripts for our backups and our index optimizations and integrity checks. Like I said, I've got a custom set that has the config tables that I'll give you. That way, if you do use multi-server target jobs, you can set those per server. And then we capture weight stats using a script that Paul Randall's put out. I think we capture every 5 minutes and chart those. So I'll show you how I chart those, and I've actually got a Power BI report where you can take a look at how I do that on my virtual machine. So those are actually on this virtual machine. So as far as SP Who is Active goes, make that a little bit bigger. We like to capture our plans in the full text, and we tell it not to format the output and get the task info, and we put it into an output table. And we run this just in a job every minute into our database that we use as DBAs, and it's just set up in a job to run every minute. So that's all there is to that. As far as our weights capture, this is just a Paul script, and we inserted it into our DBA locals table that we're using to capture data. And the only thing I really added is the UTC date time, so that we know what time it was captured. And that's set up as a job as well. So for those that don't know what weight stats are, Paul Randall has a great blog that lists all the weight stats out there, and has captured a lot of information from Century1 with some charts, and explains all the weight stats that you need to know about in great detail. Then Brent has his set up to be able to be captured to a table as well. So you can capture that to a table just like you can the SP Who is Active. You just got to tell it what database, what schema, and what table, of course, to capture it to. So if we look at the Blitz results, of course, this is just off my VM, so it's probably going to find all kinds of stuff it doesn't like. Well, yeah, like, you know, I haven't done backups in a while, so those are important things. He sets these up in priorities, so over time you can run these and fix the things that are bad and take care of those type of things. And and then, you know, things are on the C drive, they shouldn't be, and then it goes up into performance. And these are the type of things that you can run, and they can tell you, hey, you need to improve some things on your system and what things you could be monitoring and security and stuff. And you can capture these over time and improve things one by one, and then you can go back to your manager and show them, hey, things are improving over time. And some of these you may go, hey, I need to make policies around them and stick them in that enterprise-based policy management system and make sure things are set the same way. As far as SP Who is Active, this is just going to show you data that's been collected over time as far as stuff that's ran. It shows you what's been ran, who ran it, what it was waiting on, how much CPU it's ran, how many tasks it had, and a bunch of other information about, you know, the temp DB, the reads writes, you know, physical reads writes. You can get your query plans out of here, how much memory it used, what program ran it, what computer it came from, and of course when it started and the time that it ran. And this is just useful for troubleshooting when someone comes and goes, hey, what was going on at 2:30 yesterday? You can go on there and, you know, run this and go, you know, what was running between 2:20 and 2:40 and try to narrow it down and try to see if you can find something. I capture weight stats on my VM, at least, I think every minute, just so I get a lot of data for my Power BI report that I wrote. And it's just, you know, collecting data constantly when it's running anyways. So I wrote a Power BI report that just shows you a chart. As you can tell, it goes down over time because I turn off my machine every now and then. And last time I did a presentation, I left it running for a long time, so things came up. But as you go over the chart, it tells you what your top weights are for those periods of time. And mine are, you know, CX packet weights, which doesn't surprise me because I run a high workload of AdventureWorks on my machines for my query store presentation. So it eats up a lot of CPU on my machine. Write log is my lowest one. I'm running mostly a read workload, and then it's not doing much of anything today. Got some page locking, some other different things going on today, and then you can just refresh the report at any time, and it'll pull back more data for you. So that'll be included in the download, the creation of the table and the job in the Power BI report. Those are just a few things I use to monitor things with. I actually have a whole nother presentation on collecting baselines. So. Another way of collecting performance reports is there's a tool called the PAL tool, which is the performance analysis of logs. So what you can do is it's another Code Plus project, which is being moved over to Git, is you can create a perfmon log on your machine, and after the fact, process that into a report, and it'll give you nice pretty charts and tell you what all the performance counters mean. And then you can take and based off that information, make decisions based off of stuff. The only problem with that is it's not real time. It's something that you have to set up and, you know, look at it after the fact. So I, at my previous job, had to set up on every server, and I had a server dedicated to just processing the reports the next day. I do have a blog series about how to go about setting it up across all your servers from like 4 years ago. And it gives you all the counters you need to monitor for SQL Server. So we're going to take a look at that tool as well, because it's kind of handy for knowing what perfmon counters to set up. So when you go in here, you can tell it what path to set it to. So I'm going to set it to just a temp path for now. And when you pick a threshold file, you pick SQL Server, and they don't have a 2016 one. So from here, you can actually just export that file to your desktop for SQL PAL, and then you can use that to create a counter log that just runs on your machine all the time. This is so you can process one that's been running all the time. Cortana, leave me alone. But this is so you can process a file that already exists. But if you want to set up a file, you would export and create it, and we'll walk through that process as well. Then you have questions about how your machine is set up. So they want to know what your BPE health is, whether it's an OLTP versus an OLP work, what operating system you have, how much memory you have, what PLE health you expect, whether you use VAS memory or not, and whether you're using in-memory optimized tables or not. And we're just going to leave those all as the default. And then for your output options, they want to know what analysis interval you want. I recommend setting it to something because the auto, it might do every 6 minutes, it might do every 8 minutes. I'd prefer to have it set to something that's predictable. So every 10 or 30 or an hour, something that's predictable. And then the file output, it's going to put it in your My Documents by default and time and date stamp it for you. And then it's going to process it, and it processes it using, trying to zoom in on it. It processes it actually using PowerShell. This is how I figured out how to automate it. So if I picked a file, which we didn't pick one because it'll take a while to execute, so I'm just going to show you the output of one. It'll run through and process it, and it'll create a HTML report for you. So if you go through this and get it set up, you can easily automate this yourself. So, and I have a report that I processed before. This is what one will look like, because it takes a good 3 to 4 minutes to process, so it's not a good thing to demo. And of course, on my report, on my laptop, it reports back a whole bunch of errors because there's, not enough memory, and log flushes per second are terrible, but it gives you all the stats that you need to know, and it explains things to you. I'm trying to find where the explanations are at. But some of these don't actually have explanations. Most of them do, though. But it does tell you what each thing is, the total number of log truncations that happen in the database. And it gives you all the charts that you need to see for stuff. So there goes one with a little bit more explanations in it. And if you're using deprecated features, it'll tell you if you're using those and how you go about finding that information out, what TechNet article to read. So it gives you some useful information if you don't mind finding out how your system is performing after the fact. Now, as far as that file we exported for the thresholds, you can actually go into data collectors on your Perfmon tool and set it up to run as a data collector. Now I have a few set up from doing demos. So you can set up a new data collector from a template, and we saved it to our desktop. And yeah, as you can tell, it knows that we got it from the PAL tool. And if we go into it, you can see it has a ton of counters in it. And we scroll down, we'll see a whole bunch of SQL ones. So it keeps up with everything. It does it every 15 seconds. And what I did when I automated is I had a job that would turn it off at midnight and start a new one. It would rename it and start a new one at midnight and then process the old one. So that's how I kept up with it, because I wasn't allowed to collect stats real time at my last job. So getting into Query Store, we got a few minutes left. So this is new to 2016. Basically, it's like a little black box that captures your workload that's running on your machine in real time. They used to have a utility called RML where you could run server-side traces and do sort of like what you do with PAL and capture it and then run the reports after the fact and see what happens. Now there's a guy Enrico that's and a couple other people that have worked on a project called Open Query Store that runs on older versions. That they just released version 2 this week, and I haven't played with version 2 yet. That does some of what Query Store does for the older versions of SQL. That might be worth checking out on the development system. But it keeps up with everything that runs on your server and lets you see what all's been running on your server. So we're going to take a quick look at Query Store, and then we will be done with the presentation. Query Store has 6 reports now. I haven't upgraded my Studio Manager on this particular server, but it has a couple more reports. But it shows you your overall consuming queries, and you can tell I run different workloads at different times based on when I do presentations. But you can drill down on this, and it automatically takes you into your top consuming queries. and it'll show you which query is your top consuming query. And then it'll show you your query plans, and you can take a look and see if anything is out of whack, basically. And one cool thing that it does is if there's multiple query plans in here, it'll show you multiple plans over here, and you can decide, hey, this plan's better than the other plan. Let me force this plan to always be the one that it picks, so you can take care of your parameter sniffing problems or any plan regressions that go on. And that's a whole nother talk in of itself, because I do have a separate talk for Query Store. New in the newest Studio Manager, you do have the ability to click on the two query plans and compare them side by side inside of Studio Manager, so you can see the differences between the two and see what they're doing. They have this grid view where you can actually see the name of the stored procedures. So you can actually go in here and find the stored procedures that's causing you havoc. And they got your CPU time, your total duration time, and you can see which things are eating up your number of problems and which things have multiple plans, so you can pick things out. You can configure which metric you're looking at, and whether you want to look at the total or the average or the max min, or you want to look at standard deviation. And they've added a few columns with the newest Studio Manager as well. And like I said, they've got a couple of extra reports in the new Studio Manager 17.2 that I haven't loaded on this machine yet. But that's how you keep up with what's running on your system with 2016, and I would take a look at the new Open Query Store for anything 2008 up to 2014. So back to the slide deck. Besides that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Let me just make sure I am unmuted. Okay. Can we migrate CMS settings to a new server?
Yes. The DBA Tools PowerShell module actually has a commandlet to do that. Or you can just copy the two tables from one server to the other server. That's how I did it before DBA Tools existed.
Okay, and somebody had posted a comment that CodePlex will shut down December 17th, 2017. And he posted a long link, which I'm not going to read out loud. You all can Google it.
Yeah. I mentioned that a couple of times.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of times CodePlex is shutting down, so I want to see if those couple of things have moved to GitHub yet or not.
Okay. Amir would like to know of the link to the new website for SP Who is Active.
I'll have to look. I think it's just SP Who is Active. Yep, it's whoisactive.com.
And another question, how do you monitor always-on cluster instances in a large environment?
Well, what we do is we have a third-party tool called Nagios, and we query the always-on extended event sessions on each of the boxes for events that are happening. I actually have a presentation on that as well.
With all the tools that you use, do you have a need for Idera, SentryOne, Quest, etc.?
No, we actually pretty much make our own.
For your production SQL 16 boxes, do you have Query Store enabled on all databases? Does it add a bit of overhead?
We added it to every database, and we have some servers that have over 100 databases, and we did not notice the overhead.
You mentioned that there is another presentation for setting the performance baseline. Would you know where we can find it?
It's actually on my website. I can bring that back up my slide. I'm actually working on making that one better than what it is now, but I have plans to have a better one by October for a conference that I'm doing in October, so.
Excuse me. Is there a reliable way to patch multiple SQL Server clusters unattended?
We are using that PowerShell script to patch our AGs that way. We put our AGs in manual failover mode, and we patch the secondaries, and then we check them out, make sure the secondary looks good. We fail over to the secondaries, and then we patch the other ones just using that PowerShell script. So I would say yes.
We install SQL Server almost on a daily basis. Is there a way to automate that?
Yes. When you go through the install of SQL Server, right before you get to the end, it gives you a configuration INI file location, and you can use that, and you can use that to do a command line install. If you're doing VMs, you can set up a template and just spin up a template and sysprep it.
Okay, I think that's it. Tracy, if you'll send me your PowerPoint and your demo scripts, I can post them with the recording.
Okay.
And thank you, everybody. Our next meeting will be I think it's the 13th of September. I don't have the calendar in front of me. Yeah, it is the 13th of September. And it's going to be about managing big data for the naive and confused. I think it'll be a good presentation. Prashant has presented for us several times. And it looks like Tracy's got a wealth of presentations, so we're going to have to invite her back. And thank you very much, Tracy. I think people got a lot out of that. And I'm going to end the meeting. And the presentation and the recording will be posted at dba.pas.org on the meeting archives page. That's where we always put them. Okay? So they will be there by the end of the week. Okay, thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, Tracy, for an enlightening presentation. And we're going to end this webinar.